So one of the things that I really hate about trying to use this streaming software is that no matter what, there's always something in the setup that goes wrong or doesn't work. So today, I even gave myself like 20 minutes to figure it out because I knew there was going to be a problem. And this time the webcam wouldn't work, the mic wouldn't work, um, the program crashed once. So I apologize that I'm late again. Trying to be on time for these as often as possible, but it just sort of is becoming a thing that if I say 3:30 or 4:30, it's probably going to be like 4:35 for reasons entirely out of my control, of course. Absolutely. Trying to get the stream up on the phone, because that's usually the best way to look at the comments, and I'm not even sure that that's happening. So we're having probably even more technical difficulties here. And before I'm sure that this is actually broadcasting, because sometimes it doesn't do that, I just want to make sure that things aren't entirely broken. It's just going to be that kind of day. Hey, there we are. I hope the stream's any good. It looks like it might be choppy, and I have no idea why. But we're going to go ahead and get started, and if there are terrible feed problems, let me know. We can try to restart and get things taken care of. So, one of the things I want to talk about today is all of the rumors about Jose Bautista that have been floating around. That's pretty interesting. And then also, that was the main question we got on Facebook today as well. And then I want to go over some crazy scenarios that could play out for the Indians this year. There was an interesting thread on the baseball subreddit that's basically, what if a time traveler came from the future and explained to you why the Cubs season this year was a total disaster. So I thought it would be interesting to go over what my sort of scenario would be for what could happen to the Indians that would cause that. And still trying to get it to show the stream on my phone, but it looks like it only lets you do that if you have the Facebook app on a cell phone, because of course they want you to have as much data sent to them as possible in a consistent stream. Why would they have a functioning mobile website when that doesn't have nearly as many permissions to take information from you? Yay! This is just a frustrating day all around. So about Bautista, the main thing with this is that it's January 15th, right? That is today. And he still doesn't have a landing spot. I think that's what's driving the persistent rumors here. I don't know if it's as much the Indians actually being after him. There we go. I don't know if it's the Indians as much being after him as it is them checking in to see how much is being asked for him right now. Because if it's a situation where you can get a bat like that for $6 million, and I don't know that it would go that low, but you have to look into that. As far as him as a player, I don't necessarily think that he's the type of guy you want to have in a clubhouse anywhere. But again, if the Indians feel that they can bring him onto the roster and they can have him buy into what the Indians are trying to do and not be the guy that said that Ryan Merritt was shaking in his boots before the ALCS game, then I think there's a reason to think about bringing him on. He's been really consistent for the last 5 years, the same way Encarnacion has. He showed a bit of a drop-off last season. But for that kind of money, it's hard to not seriously think about it. Some people are saying that it could be because the Indians don't think that Brantley's going to be back, and that's why they're looking for another bat. I don't necessarily think that's the case. If there were issues with Brantley that the team wasn't disclosing, I don't know that Joey Bats is going to be the guy that they look at. He's essentially going to be another DH and or bad left fielder defensively. Brantley's average defensively, or at least he was before the injury. So if the reason that they're looking is because Brantley isn't healthy, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, to be honest. Now, I don't want them to sign Bautista anyway. It doesn't seem like there is any team in baseball that really likes him as a human being, including the Blue Jays. He has that phenomenal moment from the bat flip in 2015, and that sort of seems like that's going to be the crystallizing moment of his entire career, where absolutely great hit, wonderful play, a bit of showmanship, definitely talked it up a little bit, and then ended up getting decked in the face the next season because of it by Rougned Odor. So, with all of that in mind, I just don't feel like the Indians need to give him the time of day when it comes to this. It seems like the video's a little bit choppy, and I'm chalking that up to Facebook. A lot of times there's not a lot we can do because they will downscale the quality no matter what. I'm just loving on Facebook today. Just a wonderful company. If anybody else has theories as to why the Indians might be checking in on Bautista, we'd love to hear them right now. I feel like I've touched base on most of what I've heard. Most of the things that I'm, in my sort of limited capacity, aware of. As far as fun nightmare scenarios that the Indians might encounter, I think that Brantley, while being sort of the story of the offseason for the Indians, arguably, other than getting to the World Series, the biggest story that the Indians have been dealing with. I don't know necessarily that he would be the main reason that the team doesn't manage to bounce back. I think it would be something to do with the pitching staff. We saw Carrasco get hurt. We saw Salazar miss time. While the Indians were able to rally behind that with the bullpen that they had, I can see a situation in which Miller's not as effective as he was last year because he was literally the Jesus Christ of baseball, basically. The second half of the season and in the postseason. The numbers that he put up are like an entire standard deviation better than what any other pitcher did per inning in the league. I don't think we can expect that level of pitching next year. I think he'll continue to be one of the best relievers in the game, as will Cody Allen. But we might see a little bit of a step back from his superhuman, supernatural, superhero status. Super. If you combine that with the innings finally catching up to Allen and Shaw, so they take a little bit of a step back too, I think we've got a top 15 bullpen. But if you combine that with a situation where some other guys are also taking small steps back, I'm not talking about a collapse, but let's say that Jose Ramirez isn't a 5-4 wins above replacement guy. He just had the breakout season last year, and he's not quite able to keep up with that pace. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 wins, which is still good, but he doesn't become a linchpin that drives the team and in a lot of ways carries the left field position for the beginning of the year and then becomes an above average third baseman, like borderline all-star. Maybe he takes a step back. I don't think we see the same production from Naquin next year, unfortunately. We've talked about it a lot on Let's Go Tribe. He can't hit a high fastball at the moment. He's working on it. His batting average on balls in play was enormous, and that doesn't necessarily say a lot about what his numbers, or it doesn't necessarily say good things about what his slash line could be for the rest of his career. So a pause on that, because we are getting some questions and things about Bautista right now. Frank Kobe Luke wants to know, what would Jose Bautista and Merritt say to each other in spring training? I would hope that they would both be professionals about it. Merritt seems like a class act. I don't know if you saw, but he and his wife sent letters to every single person that bought something for their Target gift registry, which, as he was throwing his awesome game in the playoffs, fans on Twitter found the gift registry. I think it was like Sports Yelling that finally confirmed, like, no, this is them. Let's buy him everything. And that's how he ended up, presumably, with 800 dish towels. But they actually wrote a letter to everyone that donated to the registry, which I thought was great. So I think he would be fine with it. Like I said, I just don't necessarily think that Bautista is a consummate professional. While he is a quote-unquote professional hitter, we're not talking about a guy like Raul Ibanez, who knows what his role is. He's there to pick up 400 plate appearances and mash. Keeps his mouth shut, maybe even leads the team a little bit. I don't think Bautista's that guy. Aiden, I definitely agree. It would be great to have that bat in the lineup. I just don't know. I feel stupid for being the guy who's saying, what about clubhouse chemistry? Yeah. But he's already starting to regress, so I don't know that we get 40 home runs, even 30 home runs from him. And we already have Santana and Encarnacion who are going to take up DH positions. So I don't necessarily know that we want another below average glove at a position out there. So that's at least how I feel about it. I could be completely wrong. Perhaps Encarnacion would be able to handle first base for an entire year with Santana DHing, and maybe Bautista would be able to do left field, sort of in a weird platoon with Brantley. But again, I'm expecting Brantley to spend some time at DH in the beginning of the year too, just to help him get back into everyday baseball. It's one thing to be fully healthy, but the man hasn't played. He hasn't been playing every day for almost, it's like a year and a half now. So it's one thing to be in shape physically and be back at full health, but you got to get back into the swing of everyday baseball. So giving him some time at DH would definitely help. So I think it's just, if the Indians can get him for $6 million, they do it and they trade Chisenhall or something. But that would hurt me in my soul. I don't know if Napoli and Trumbo would also be in play. I think Napoli already signed. Did he? Didn't he? I'm curious. Okay, I guess he hasn't yet, but Trumbo and Napoli are both in talks with the Rangers. I'm a little surprised that Trumbo hasn't ended up anywhere yet. I just don't see the Indians adding another piece. I think they saw the opportunity with Encarnacion. They wait for it, and they hit it. If there's like a left-handed pitcher they want to take another gamble on, which they already have signed a couple, I think they might do that. But in some ways, going out and getting another bat almost signals to Brantley that they're not confident in his ability to come back. And I don't know whether that would affect him or not, but I think it might have some interest in the clubhouse, or might do some things in the clubhouse. Carey got a letter from Merritt, which is pretty cool. Someone posted it onto Reddit on Wahoo's TP earlier, and it's just a really nice note. And then the official team account even said, like, this is awesome. We love that he was able to do this. Do I not see the numbers? Chisenhall, Geyer, Platoon versus Bautista. Yeah, I was going to say, given what Geyer does to right-handed pitching, and given what Chisenhall's been able to do against right-handed pitching for most of his career, like, that's our right field next year as far as I'm concerned. I think that's a 3 wins above combination. Geyer's another guy who I think he played 30 games or 40 games. Or it was a third of the season for the Indians, and he was like 1.7 wins above replacement. I don't think he's going to be a 5 wins guy for a full season, which goes back a little bit to what I was talking about earlier. But, excuse me. I just don't see us adding another piece. I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over again, and with choppy video, it probably makes for a wonderful broadcast. And I apologize. Oh. Back to the nightmare scenario. Let's say Ramirez takes a step back. Carey was pointing out that, and I can only see 4 comments at once because of how terrible the desktop version of Facebook is for Facebook Live. I want to try to pull it up, but I can't even do that. That's amazing. But let's say the bullpen takes a step back. Let's say Geyer is mortal. Let's say that Jose regresses a little. Let's even say that Lindor has an off year, which for him is probably still an all-star shortstop who's going to be a future Hall of Famer, but guys have down years occasionally. Randy Johnson had a season where he was like statistically a number 4 starter. It happens. We'll say that Brantley misses half the season or so, or maybe he plays the full season but just isn't quite there. That's quite a bit of production that's missing on the team. We add Encarnacion. I think that's probably still a team that has a chance to win a division. And probably still wins the AL Central, but I don't see it being a team that contend in the playoffs. That's the mild nightmare scenario. The real nightmare scenario is that, let's say, Kluber gets hurt and misses 2 months. While losing Carrasco and Salazar for a while, as someone had pointed out, and I can't remember the name because Facebook won't let me go back and look at it because it's terrible. Losing those guys hurt a lot, and essentially Bauer was out for part of it too, but losing Kluber, we know he's going to go out and basically pitch a quality start every single time except for the random games where his 2-seamer isn't moving, so he gives up 4 runs in the first, which is like 1 out of 20 starts. All of a sudden, you're relying on Carrasco to be the ace, which I think he could be, but you've got Salazar, who's still a little bit erratic, who was great in the first half of the year, but was kind of the Salazar that we knew before that in the second half. You've got Bauer, who's going to Bauer. I believe he can still be an elite pitcher. It's time for him to start doing it consistently. And then between Tomlin and whoever the 5th starter, the next starter would be in that situation, that would be Carrasco, Salazar, Bauer. So you've got 2 guys there at the end that's going to be Cody Anderson, possibly. Please, God, no. Merritt probably doesn't start next year, but in that situation, I'm sure he does get starts. I'm drawing a blank for whatever reason on the other two guys that were up at the end of last year. Clevenger probably takes the number 4 spot in that situation, but I know I'm missing one other guy who was a starter for us that plugged in a hole that we needed plugged. That's not a phrase I should ever say. Motherfucker. Merritt, Clevenger. Did we see Sean Armstrong at one point? I guess it was just Merritt and Clevenger then for the most part. Plutko's on the 40-man, but I don't know that he's ready. We could see him at some point next year, probably in September. But again, that goes from being an elite starting rotation to an average starting rotation, I would say, unless Salazar and Bauer both take that step up. But I'm not thinking that's going to happen here in the nightmare scenario. So that's, when you put it all together, Ramirez regresses, Lindor doesn't have a spectacular year. He's just good. Some form of major injury in the starting rotation again, but more impactful than Carrasco's injuries were last year because it's the Klubat. Inconsistency from the rest of the starting rotation, and then basically Cody Allen and Andrew Miller are just mortal as well. 6 or 7 wins that the Indians are giving up, which again I think can win the Central, but we're looking at a mid-80 win team. And again, it's not a terrible nightmare, but we're thinking about younger guys improving, the bullpen staying the same, the pitching staying the same, and adding Encarnacion and possibly Brantley. That's a 100-win team. So a 15-win swing one way or the other, it's a little terrifying. And that's saying that nobody other than Brantley in the field gets hurt. Let's say Kipnis gets a cleats-up slide from somebody at second base and misses the second half of the year. What the hell do you do there? That sort of rolls into the question that Mike asks here, which is, are we going to see Yandy this year? Yandy Diaz. Yes. Any injury, basically, if he's not up with the team to start the season, and he should be, he'll be the first guy they reach to, because if Kipnis gets hurt, I think you move Jose to second because he's played there at the major league level, and put Diaz at third, but Diaz can play second, he can play short, he can play left and right, he can probably play first base too. He's 25 years old, so it's not like he really needs to prove anything else in the minors at AAA, where he hit plus 300 and had a plus 400 on base percentage. I'm a stern supporter of the hashtag Free Yandy movement. I think we all should be. I don't see any reason for him to not start in the Michael Martinez role. I think they gave Martinez a minor league free agent position, which he only ends up being on the team if they tap him for the 40-man at some point. But with Eric Gonzalez, the shortstop at AAA, and with Diaz right there, who are both, I don't know how they can't be better than Michael Martinez right now, let alone the potential they have to grow. I think we see him. The interesting question to me about who do we see come up next year is Zimmer. There's been a lot of talk about his strikeout rate. People are worried about that. He's still a 5-tool-ish player. I don't think any of those tools are plus. I don't even know if any of them are 70 grade on an 80 grade scale, but they're all good now with a chance to be very good in the future. If he can come onto the team sometime in the summer and contribute sort of in the same capacity that Naquin did last year, I think that can give the team a big boost. But we'll see what happens. We've still got quite a ways until the official start of spring training, although pitchers and catchers are reporting sooner than that. This is like a holiday for me every winter. The first pitchers and catchers will report on February 13th, so basically a month from today. And that will be great. First full workouts are beginning on the 17th and 18th for the most part. For the Indians, the Indians actually report pitchers and catchers a day before everyone else on the 12th, so that's fun. Then they get the first workout on the 13th, and position players show up and work out on the 17th, so exciting. A couple more opinions here about Bautista. Linda says, no way. I'm assuming it's Jean-Nicolas says, yes to Bautista, even if he's a madman. He's a good player and would help the tribe. I think this is something I've talked a lot about on these streams, is how do you balance the terrible influence of a guy in a clubhouse with great performance, which is probably what I see from Bautista. I would hope that leaders like Kipnis, like Santana, like Kluber would be able to keep him in line, but he doesn't seem like the fired up guy that punches a cooler or breaks a phone with a bat that people like. Sometimes you like that energy. It always seems like it's very negative in a way. I guess the flip side of that is a guy like Napoli was in the second half of the year, where he's really not contributing very much at that point, but he's still a great leader in the clubhouse. He's still tutoring, providing tutoring, mentoring guys like Jose Ramirez and Lindor, and even Kipnis to a certain extent. Just, here's what the postseason's going to be like. Here's how you've got to prepare. Even down to, on this count, in this situation, from this guy, here's the pitch you're looking for, and if you see it, swing. That's the crazy intangible stuff that maybe we're never quite going to get down to, and at that point, there's no numbers. You got to rely on the old school scouts. A guy like Francona, who I think knows exactly who those guys can be on a team. It would be really interesting to see, let's say they do sign Bautista. I would love to see Francona's reaction to it, because I remember when the Cubs signed Chapman and Madden has that press conference, you can just kind of see it wasn't his usual kind of demeanor. He was just like, well, he's a very talented pitcher that the Indians can use on that the Cubs can use on a deep postseason run, and we believe that on the field he can be an integral part to winning the World Series. Again, not necessarily the kind of guy you want in the clubhouse. I could see Francona giving sort of the same press conference about Bautista coming on. I don't necessarily think that Bautista's as bad a human as Aroldis Chapman is, but he's probably also not as talented a baseball player at this point. That's what I got anyway. In the 28 days that Carey reports, until pitchers and catchers report, we've still got the prospect rankings going on at Let's Go Tribe. I think we've done the first 12, so we've now got sort of the deeper organizational stuff, which if you're not familiar with the Indians farm system, this is a great way to get to know it. One of the great things about the Indian system is, even though we don't have guys like Yohan Moncada or Byron Buxton, who are these elite level guys that are ready to go now, we've got guys all the way down at 8, 9, 10, like Nolan Jones, who have a ceiling that could be all-star third baseman. You've got a guy like Will Benson. You've got a guy like Greg Jones, who kind of came out of nowhere and looks like he could be an everyday center fielder at some point. And a lot of this is speculative, but these guys have shown that they have that ceiling. It's not like they're high floor guys that just are going to stick around on a 25-man roster for 5 years. They could be impact players. I guess the only other thing of note that's on my mind is that during the World Series, Manfred